It was during a family dinner with my son Daniel and his wife Sarah, the first real peace we'd had after years of not speaking, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Get up and go now. Don't say anything to your son." Something about it made my skin prickle, so I listened. That choice revealed a truth so awful it made my hair stand on end. Half an hour later, the police were knocking at their door. And what happened after that? Well, you'd never believe it. Earlier that evening, the dish soap bubbles clung stubbornly to my worn hands as I scrubbed Linda's favorite coffee mug for the third time that week. Same routine, every night. Washing one plate, one fork, one cup, a quiet reminder of another lonely dinner. The kitchen felt too big without her humming as she cooked, without her gentle teasing about my scattered newspapers. I dried the mug carefully and set it in the dish rack, the same place it always sat, like a small shrine to better days. The fridge hummed in the background, its surface covered with faded photographs and mismatched magnets. My eyes landed on a picture of Daniel at his high school graduation, 17 years old, grinning in his cap and gown with Linda's arm wrapped proudly around him. That was before the fights, before the money trouble, before the silence. Then the phone's sharp ring sliced through my thoughts. My wet hands fumbled for a towel as it rang again and again. I lifted the cold wall-mounted receiver, squinting at the caller ID through my reading glasses. The name made my breath catch. Daniel. For a moment, I froze. A whole year had passed since we'd spoken, ever since he'd stormed out after I refused to lend him money for his big investment idea. Linda would have handled it better. She always knew the right words. "Hello," I managed, my voice rougher than I wanted. "Dad." His voice had that same nervous tone he used to have as a boy when he'd broken something valuable and didn't know how much trouble he was in. It's me." I gripped the phone tighter, my heart pounding. "Daniel, I wasn't expecting." I know it's been." He paused, and I could hear him breathing. "Too long. Way too long." I slowly sat down in my old armchair, the one Linda had insisted on buying because it was good for my back. The leather was worn smooth from years of evening news and Sunday crosswords. "How are you, son?" "I'm good. Really good. Sarah and we've been talking. We realized how much we miss having you around." "How much we miss," he hesitated. "Family." That word lingered in the air. We'd had it once, before pride, money, and stubbornness built walls between us. "I miss it too," I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty in my voice. "Dad, would you come for dinner tonight? Sarah's making that pot roast you always loved, and we could talk. Really talk. Like before." I glanced at the family photo on my side table. Daniel, Sarah, Linda, and me at their wedding 5 years ago, before everything had gone wrong. Linda had always said, families find their way back to each other, given time. "Tonight?" I asked, caught off guard. "I know it's short notice," he said quickly, "but Sarah's already cooking, and we just don't want to wait anymore. We've wasted enough time." Something in his voice pulled at me, the same vulnerability he'd shown as a little boy during thunderstorms. Maybe Linda had been right. Maybe families could heal. "What time?" I asked. 7:30. "I'll text you the address." We moved to Brookhaven last year. Brookhaven, expensive area, but Daniel had always aimed high. "I'll be there, Dad," Daniel said, his voice softer now. "Thanks for giving us another chance." After we hung up, I stayed there for a while, sitting in the growing dusk, holding the family photo with trembling hands. Linda smiled at me from the frame, and I could almost hear her whisper, "It's time, Robert. Time to come home." The silence after the dial tone felt different, not empty anymore, but full of possibility. I set the photo carefully back on the side table and stood with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in months. Tonight was going to be different. Tonight, I'd have my son back. Upstairs, my bedroom felt like a museum of memories. Linda's perfume bottles still lined her dresser, and tiny dust motes floated in the late afternoon light streaming through lace curtains. I opened my closet, pushing past my everyday shirts and worn sweaters until my hand found the navy suit hanging in its plastic cover. The fabric felt sturdy under my fingers. That will blend, Linda had insisted on when she surprised me with it for Daniel's graduation. You need something nice for important occasions, she'd said, smoothing the lapels with her careful hands. And our son graduating is definitely important. I laid the suit on the bed and unwrapped it slowly, remembering the pride that had swelled in me that day, walking into the auditorium with Linda at my side, watching Daniel cross the stage. That same suit had seen me through job interviews, anniversaries, and, painfully, Linda's funeral. Tonight, it would witness something new. The hot shower eased muscles I hadn't realized were tense. While shaving, I caught my reflection watching me with hopeful eyes. When had I gotten so old? The lines at the corners of my eyes were deeper now, and silver dominated my temples. Would Daniel notice? Would Sarah see how lonely I'd been? Linda's perfume still sat on the bathroom counter, Chanel No. 5, her little Christmas gift to herself every year. I touched the bottle for a moment, then reached for my own aftershave instead. Some memories were too precious to borrow from. Once dressed, I checked myself in the mirror one last time. The suit still fit well, though it hung a little looser than it used to. From the cabinet, I took out a bottle of aged whiskey, a peace offering, something to help bridge the gap between old hurts and future hopes. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. 247 Oak Ridge Lane, Brookhaven. Can't wait to see you, Dad. I booked an Uber, hesitating slightly before typing in the address. Brookhaven was 40 minutes away, a whole other world from my modest place in Queens. The app said the car would arrive in 8 minutes. Standing by my front window, I watched as the familiar brownstones blurred into evening shadows. Mrs. Martinez from next door waved from her stoop, and I waved back, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. Maybe tonight really could change everything. Maybe family could find its way home again. The Uber pulled up right on time, a spotless sedan with a friendly driver who commented on the nice weather. As we left Queens behind, highways gave way to manicured suburbs, and the world outside my window began to transform. The houses got bigger, the lawns perfectly trimmed, the driveways wide and clean. By the time we crossed into Connecticut, I was staring at sprawling mansions that could have fit 6 families like mine. Brookhaven's beautiful, the driver said, catching me staring. A lot of successful folks live here. I'm visiting my son, I replied, pride welling in my chest, even as I wondered how Daniel could possibly afford a place like this. Lucky man, having family in a place like this, the driver said. Lucky indeed, I thought, though a thin thread of unease wound itself through my excitement. How exactly had Daniel managed to buy a house in one of Connecticut's priciest zip codes? The Uber slowed to a stop in front of a home that looked straight out of an architecture magazine. I stayed seated for a moment, staring at its towering stone columns and perfectly shaped topiaries, each one probably worth more than my monthly rent. A circular driveway wrapped around an ornate fountain where water danced in the soft evening light. 2 luxury cars, a Mercedes and a BMW, sat gleaming like trophies. This is it, sir, the driver said cheerfully. Beautiful place. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my wallet, counting out the bills and adding a generous tip. Thank you. Have a good evening. The car door felt heavier than it should as I stepped out onto flawless pavement. My polished but well-worn shoes clicked against the stone as I made my way along the curved path toward an entrance that could have belonged to a boutique hotel. Motion sensor lights blinked on one by one, throwing my arrival into a kind of stage-lit spotlight. Before I could touch the brass doorbell, the massive oak door swung open. A middle-aged Hispanic woman with kind eyes and graying hair stood there in a crisp black dress, the kind that said professional housekeeper without a word. Her warm smile reached her lips, but behind her eyes, there was a flicker of something else. Concern, maybe even warning, gone so fast I wondered if I'd imagined it. Mr. Harris. She greeted me warmly, stepping aside to let me in. I'm Maria. Mr. Daniel and Miss Sarah are so excited you're here. The sight that met me inside stole my breath. Marble floors stretched to a curved staircase that looked like it belonged in a movie about the ultra-rich. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across oil paintings that looked real and expensive. The air was scented with fresh flowers, the kind you replace every few days, not the artificial ones I kept at home. Dad. Daniel's voice echoed from deeper in the house. Footsteps closing in. He stepped into the foyer looking like a man from a lifestyle magazine. Tailored suit, flawless haircut, and a smile that revealed teeth far whiter than they'd been at his graduation. When he hugged me, it was tight, almost desperate, holding for a beat longer than usual. "You look great," he said, stepping back, his eyes scanning me with a mix of gratitude and something else. Anxiety, maybe. "Really great." Sarah appeared at his side like a vision, wearing a silk dress that probably cost more than my car. Her makeup was perfect, her jewelry subtle but clearly expensive, and her perfume wrapped around me as she kissed my cheek. "Robert, you look wonderful. We're so happy you're here." I managed a smile, still trying to take in the overwhelming luxury of the place. "This is incredible. How do you—" "Real estate," Daniel cut in quickly, his laugh just a shade too bright. "Caught the market at the perfect moment. Mostly luck." Something in his tone made me pause, but Sarah had already taken my arm with smooth, practiced grace. "Come, let's get you settled. Maria, could you take Mr. Harris's coat?" I handed over my jacket, my best one, though it suddenly felt small and tired in these surroundings. Maria took it with another of those warm but troubled smiles before disappearing toward what I suspected was a coat closet larger than my entire bedroom. "I brought this," I said, holding out the bottle of whiskey I'd chosen so carefully. "Thought we could share a drink," I said, handing over the whiskey. Daniel's face lit up as he turned the bottle to read the label. "Dad, this is fantastic. You shouldn't have, but I'm glad you did." He clapped my shoulder with enthusiasm that felt just a shade too practiced. "Sarah's been cooking all afternoon," he added. "She remembered how much you love pot roast." I blinked at that. How would Sarah know my food preferences? In 5 years, we'd shared maybe 3 meals, and I couldn't recall pot roast ever coming up. Still, her smile was warm, genuine, or at least it looked that way, so I let the thought drift away. "You're too kind," I told her, and I meant it, even through my confusion. "Family takes care of family," she replied smoothly, looping her arm through mine. "That's what matters most." Daniel led us toward what I assumed was the dining room. His stride was confident, but there was a tightness in his eyes I couldn't quite name. Maria had vanished somewhere into the quiet depths of the house, leaving the three of us moving through rooms that looked like they'd been plucked straight from the glossy pages of a design magazine. I tried to reconcile this level of luxury with the same son who had asked me for a loan just a year ago. The dining room opened before us like something out of a period drama. Rich mahogany table set for 4, fine china catching the warm glow from an overhead chandelier, silver gleaming against crisp white linen. The savory scent of pot roast drifted in from beyond a set of swinging doors, leading, no doubt, to a kitchen bigger than my entire apartment. "This is beautiful," I breathed, genuinely awed. Sarah's face lit up at the compliment. "We want tonight to be special. We want to start over, Robert. All of us." Daniel pulled out my chair with the kind of practiced ease that comes from years of formal dining. As I sat, I couldn't help thinking how proud Linda might have been in this moment. Her boy, successful, polished, ready to reconcile. Maybe she would have approved of this chance I was about to take. The dining room glowed with a warm, curated perfection. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier's light, scattering tiny rainbows over the table. Bone china, likely worth more than a month of my rent, gleamed alongside silverware arranged with military precision. Cloth napkins were folded into flawless peaks. "This is incredible," I murmured, running my fingers over the polished edge of the table. Daniel grinned, placing my chair at the head of the table. "Only the best for family reunions, right, Dad?" Sarah took the seat to my left, Daniel to my right. The setup felt intentional, both positioned to watch my every move and steer the conversation. Maria appeared silently from the kitchen, carrying appetizers so carefully arranged they looked like art pieces. "Let's start with your whiskey," Daniel said, already twisting open the cap. The amber liquid caught the chandelier's glow as he poured generous servings into heavy crystal tumblers. "This calls for a proper toast," he said, handing me a glass filled higher than I would have poured for myself. The first sip spread warmth through my chest as Sarah raised her wineglass with graceful precision. "To family," she said, her smile radiant, "to forgiveness and fresh starts." "To Linda," Daniel added softly, his voice catching for just a moment. "She would have wanted us together like this." The whiskey burned sweetly as we drank. Linda always used to say that alcohol loosened tongues and hearts in equal measure. Tonight, surrounded by so much obvious wealth, I couldn't help but wonder what she'd think of this extravagant display. "Tell us about the restaurants," Sarah said, leaning in with what seemed like genuine interest. "Daniel says you built an empire from nothing." "Empire's too big a word," I replied, taking another sip and feeling unusually relaxed. "Just hard work and faith in people. Linda always said, treat employees like family, customers like friends." "Don't be modest, Dad," Daniel said, refilling my glass before I'd even noticed it was empty. 7 locations now. That's impressive by any standard." 7. He'd been keeping track, even during all that silence between us. The thought warmed something deep inside my chest. Maybe he'd cared more than I'd realized. Maria served the soup course with the quiet grace of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, though I noticed her hands tremble as she placed the bowl in front of me. Rich lobster bisque in delicate porcelain, a far cry from my modest kitchen in Queens. "Do you ever think about retiring?" Sarah asked casually, slicing her bread with deliberate precision, her tone just a bit slower now. "The restaurants keep me busy," I said. "It's what Linda and I built together." I realized I was drinking faster than usual, the mix of fine whiskey and warm company loosening walls I'd kept up for months. "Every location has her fingerprints on it." Daniel and Sarah exchanged a look, quick, but loaded. I pretended not to see it. They had that silent kind of communication couples develop over years. Sarah's hand brushed mine briefly, her fingers cool against my skin. "But you can't work forever," Daniel pressed gently. "Have you thought about succession? You know, legal arrangements for the future." The question struck me as oddly specific, but the alcohol blurred the edges of my thoughts until it felt harmless. "One day at a time, son. One day at a time." Maria reappeared with the main course, pot roast, smelling exactly like Linda's recipe. I couldn't understand how Sarah had gotten it so perfect. We'd barely shared meals over the years. "This is perfect," I told her sincerely. "Exactly like my wife used to make." Her smile looked flawless, almost painted on. "I wanted tonight to be special. To remind you that family takes care of family." As we ate, Daniel launched into stories about his real estate ventures, but his details were frustratingly vague. Sarah asked pointed, almost businesslike questions about the restaurants, profit margins, property values, operations. Their curiosity felt intense. The room grew warmer as the evening went on. My head felt lighter than it should have after just 2 glasses of whiskey. I told myself it was just the food, the company, and the relief of reconciliation. Nothing more. Daniel checked his watch when he thought I wasn't looking. Sarah kept an eye on my glass like a bartender making sure a customer stayed topped up. Maria moved between the kitchen and dining room with quick, nervous steps, dropping a fork that clattered loudly on the marble. Something tugged at the edge of my mind, but the whiskey made focusing harder. The whole night felt faintly unreal, like I was watching myself from across the room. When had I turned into such a lightweight? I reached toward my jacket pocket for my phone, thinking I might show them pictures from the Queen's opening last month. Linda would have been so proud of how the community had welcomed us. But before I could pull it out, my phone started to vibrate. The sudden buzz startled me mid-sentence. "Sorry," I murmured, giving Daniel and Sarah an apologetic glance. Probably just the night manager with some routine question. The number on my screen wasn't one I recognized. Local area code, sure, but the rest was completely unfamiliar. I frowned. my thumb hovering over the notification. Restaurant emergencies always came from numbers I knew. Miguel from our Riverside Heights location, Sarah from the Fairview Park spot, Tony from our newest Midtown Harbor venture. The phone buzzed again, more insistent this time. Everything all right? Daniel leaned forward, his concern coming off a little too intense. Just an unfamiliar number, I said, shielding the screen with my napkin, driven by an instinct I couldn't quite explain. Then the text appeared, stark, all in capital letters, "Stand up and leave. Now. Say nothing to your son." My blood ran cold. The elegant dining room suddenly felt as if it were tilting under me, though I couldn't tell if it was the shock or the whiskey making my head spin. I read the words again. Same warning, same urgency. "Dad." Sarah's voice sounded far away. "You look pale. Are you feeling okay?" I forced my face into what I hoped looked normal, slipping the phone back into my pocket with hands that trembled far too much. Fine, just rich food hitting me harder than I expected. But I wasn't fine. Someone I didn't know had my private number. Someone who knew where I was, and felt the need to warn me. About what? About Daniel. About this perfect evening that suddenly felt staged? The whiskey glass in my hand caught the chandelier's light, amber liquid swirling as my fingers gave the slightest shake. When had I gotten this dizzy? 2 glasses shouldn't hit me this hard, not with a full meal. Maybe some water, Sarah suggested smoothly, already signaling toward the kitchen. Daniel studied my face like he was analyzing a stock chart. "You sure you're okay? You went completely white there for a second." "I'm sure." The lie came easier than I wanted to admit. "Just need to excuse me for a moment." "Bathroom." "Of course." Daniel pointed down the hall. "Second door on the left. We'll wait for you. Maria's bringing dessert." I stood slowly, testing my balance. The room swayed just slightly, but I managed to walk in a straight line toward the hallway. Behind me, Daniel and Sarah's voices murmured in low, concerned tones. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with expensive art and warm, understated lighting. The second door on the left was supposed to be the powder room. But instead of turning, I kept walking, drawn toward what looked like a kitchen entrance. The anonymous text burned in my mind. Whoever sent it knew something I didn't, something dangerous enough to risk warning me. Maria stood at the sink, rinsing crystal glasses with deliberate care. She didn't turn when I entered, didn't greet me, didn't even pause. My footsteps on the marble should have been impossible to miss, but she worked as if I wasn't there. The back door stood just beyond her, glass panes looking out onto a manicured lawn that could have been part of a country club. Freedom. Fresh air. Space to think without Daniel and Sarah's eyes on me. I walked past Maria, half expecting her to turn, to question me, to call out to my hosts. She didn't. But I noticed the slight tightening of her shoulders as I passed. The door opened without a sound, spilling me into the cool night air. Motion sensor lights flickered on, guiding me across perfect grass toward a tall gate in the back fence. My phone felt like a lead weight in my pocket, carrying its strange warning like a ticking bomb. Beyond the fence, street lamps promised safety, anonymity, and distance from whatever danger had made that message necessary. I picked up my pace, my dress shoes slipping slightly on the damp grass. I didn't care about stains anymore. The gate opened onto a quiet residential street lined with mansions, the kind that housed millionaires and their secrets. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, opened my rideshare app, and set the pickup location a block away from Daniel's address. 5 minutes until arrival. 5 minutes to decide if I was just being paranoid, or if I was saving my own life. The phone in my hand felt like evidence, but of what, I wasn't sure. A conspiracy. Or just my own imagination running wild. Still, those urgent capital letters had triggered every survival instinct Linda's no-nonsense wisdom had ever taught me. When someone warns you about danger, listen first, ask questions later. Headlights appeared at the end of the block, cutting through the quiet like a lifeline. I climbed into the back seat, gave the driver my Queen's address, and immediately dialed the number that had shattered my evening. It rang twice. Then a voice, careful, anonymous, deliberately neutral. I hoped you would call this number. Who is this? My voice came out rougher than I intended. Why did you warn me? I cannot reveal myself, the voice said evenly. But you were in immediate danger tonight. That's impossible. I was having dinner with my son. A pause. Too long. Your son owes $2.3 million to people who break bones when payments are late. I froze. The Uber driver glanced in the rearview mirror as we merged into traffic, probably wondering why his passenger had gone completely silent mid-conversation. That's impossible, I said again, but there was no conviction in my voice. Daniel owns real estate. He lives in a mansion. He borrowed against everything to cover gambling debts, the voice cut in. Underground casinos. High-stakes poker. Sports betting with organized loan sharks. He has 2 weeks to pay or face serious physical consequences. My free hand found the door handle, as if I could somehow escape the words by getting out of the moving car. Outside, Brookhaven's perfect lawns blurred past, their beauty suddenly looking like camouflage for ugly secrets. Even if that were true, I said slowly, what does that have to do with warning me away from dinner? The whiskey you brought contained zetrulum, the voice said without hesitation. It multiplies alcohol's effects by a factor of 5, making you extremely open to suggestion. The words hit like a blow. The unusual dizziness. How 2 glasses had felt like 6. How I'd found myself speaking freely about things I normally kept locked away. I remembered Daniel's eagerness to open my gift right away. Sarah's careful tracking of my glass. The way they'd refilled it before I even realized it was empty. Legal documents were prepared in advance, the voice continued, unflinching. Complete transfer of your restaurants and business assets. Power of attorney giving your son full control. The only missing piece was your signature. The driver kept his eyes on the road, professionally ignoring the storm brewing in his back seat. I stared out at the tidy suburban streets, every lit window now looking like it might hide its own betrayal. How do you know all this? I asked. That doesn't matter, the voice replied. What matters is that you got out before signing anything. Zetromelium combined with alcohol can cause memory gaps. It would have been easy for them to claim you willingly transferred everything. Daniel's nervous energy. Sarah's rehearsed warmth. Their pointed questions about succession planning and retirement. The whole evening replayed in my mind, now dripping with horrifying new meaning. Every toast, every refill, every carefully timed touch, all meant to wear me down. My son wouldn't, but the protest died in my throat. The boy who once begged me for bedtime stories had grown into a man desperate enough to drug his own father. The loan sharks gave him 2 weeks. That deadline is in 11 days. Why are you helping me? I finally asked. Because what they planned was wrong. And because you deserve to know the truth about the people you trust. The caller knew details no stranger should, debt amounts, drug names, specifics of illegal documents. Someone with inside access to Daniel and Sarah's plan. Who are you really? Someone who sees more than people realize. Someone who couldn't stand by and watch an innocent man be destroyed by family greed. Maria. The realization struck like a lightning bolt. Her nervous movements during dinner. The way she avoided my gaze. Her complete non-reaction when I walked through the kitchen. She'd known, and had chosen her conscience over her job. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet, she warned. They'll realize you're gone soon. Daniel is desperate enough to try again, maybe with even riskier methods. The Uber kept moving toward Queens, each passing mile stretching the distance between me and the son I thought I knew. My phone lit up with 3 missed calls from Daniel, probably wondering why a quick trip to the bathroom had turned into a vanishing act. What should I do? Protect yourself. Change your locks. Notify your lawyers. Move your assets somewhere Daniel can't touch them. He knows your business inside and out, every weakness, every habit. The driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "We're about halfway to Queens. You doing all right back there?" I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. Through the phone, I could hear Maria's steady breathing, waiting for my next question. "Will you testify if this goes to court?" "I can't. But the truth has a way of surfacing when people dig deep enough." 3 more missed calls appeared on my screen. Daniel's panic would be growing, realizing I wasn't coming back. And desperation could turn dangerous fast. "Be careful," Maria said. "Desperate people make desperate choices. Your son has 11 days to find $2.3 million, or face consequences far worse than bankruptcy." The call ended, leaving me alone with the Uber driver's soft jazz and the crushing weight of family ruin. In just one night, I'd gained my son back and lost him all over again. I'd learned the price of trust, and the cost of naivety. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Dad, where are you? We're worried sick." I stared at the words, then deleted them without replying. The man who sent them had planned to drug me into signing away everything Linda and I had built. "Sir," the driver said gently, "we're approaching the Queensboro Bridge. Still going to the original address." I looked out at the city lights shimmering on the water, then back at my phone, where the route to Brookhaven still glowed in my GPS. Safety waited ahead in Queens, but confrontation waited behind in Connecticut. For the first time in my life, I had to choose between protecting myself and protecting what was left of my family. Queens's familiar skyline shimmered through the Uber's windshield, promising comfort in my worn armchair, the one that still held Linda's memory in every thread. But safety suddenly felt like cowardice, knowing what Daniel was capable of doing to others. I pulled Linda's wedding photo from my wallet, its edges soft from years of handling. Her smile was just as radiant as the day we'd promised to build something meaningful together. She had never backed down from a hard conversation. Never chosen comfort over doing what was right. "You wouldn't run," I whispered to her image. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Everything all right back there, sir?" "Actually, no." I sat up straighter, feeling my decision settle in my chest like steel. "I need to make a phone call. Then we're changing destination." My fingers trembled as I dialed 911. 2 rings, then a professional voice. "Emergency services." "What's your emergency?" "My family is attempting to poison me for money." Saying it out loud felt surreal, like a line from a TV drama. "I have evidence, and they're still at the location, with prepared legal documents." "Sir, are you in immediate danger?" "Not right now. But I need officers at 247 Oak Ridge Lane, Brookhaven, Connecticut. I'm returning there to gather evidence." The dispatcher's questions came fast: nature of poisoning, number of suspects, weapons present. My answers were crisp, methodical, business training taking over. Clear facts. Specific details. Actionable information. Officers are en route. Estimated arrival: 20 minutes. "Sir, I strongly advise you not to return to that location until we understand the risk." Linda's photo stared back at me, her eyes holding that look she used to give me when she knew I needed to be braver than I felt. "If I don't go back," I said quietly, "they'll destroy evidence. And they might try this again, with someone else." After disconnecting, I leaned toward the driver. "Change of plans. We're going back to Brookhaven." "Sir, you seem really upset. Maybe you should think about this." "This isn't a rash decision." I met his eyes in the mirror. Sometimes you have to choose between being safe and doing what's right. The return trip felt different. Streetlights lit up determination instead of confusion, purpose instead of hurt. Every mile brought me closer to facing the son I had raised, the family I had trusted, and the future I'd have to rebuild from scratch. In my mind, Linda's voice whispered from the photograph. "Family means telling the truth, even when it hurts." 20 minutes later, we turned onto Crestview Road. Police cars moved toward us from the opposite direction, lights off, but unmistakably official. My heart pounded as the reality hit. I was about to destroy my family to save myself, and maybe others. Wait around the corner, I told the driver. This might take a while. Walking up the curved driveway felt like walking toward an execution. The mansion's flawless exterior hid calculated evil, deliberate betrayal. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorbell. The chimes echoed through the house like a funeral bell. Footsteps approached fast, too fast for casual concern. Daniel yanked the door open, relief and suspicion flickering across his face. "Dad, where have you been?" His smile looked painted on. "We were getting worried sick," Daniel said, his eyes narrowing just slightly. "Sorry, son," I replied, forcing an apologetic tone. "I just needed some fresh air. Felt dizzy after all that rich food." "Dizzy?" His gaze sharpened. "You were gone for almost half an hour. Sarah thought something terrible had happened." "Time got away from me," I said casually. "Beautiful neighborhood you have here." I walked farther than I intended. Sarah appeared behind Daniel, her designer dress rumpled from what must have been nervous pacing. For just a moment, her perfect hostess mask slipped, and I caught the raw panic underneath. "Robert, you gave us such a scare," she said, reaching for my arm with fingers that trembled ever so slightly. "Are you feeling better now?" "Much better, thank you." I let her guide me back inside, noting how her grip lingered, too long, too tight. Just needed to clear my head. The foyer felt smaller now, not grand but claustrophobic. Every gleaming surface and expensive accent seemed to hum with the knowledge of what had bought them. "Perhaps you had too much wine with dinner," Sarah offered, her laugh brittle. "Let's get you some water." "Actually," I said, moving deliberately toward the dining room, "I think I'd like to sit down again. If that's all right." Daniel and Sarah exchanged a glance, the kind of loaded look they probably thought I wouldn't notice. "Rehearsed. Calculated. Of course, Dad. Whatever you need." The dining room had been subtly altered during my absence. Papers that might have been on the table earlier were gone. Maria moved briskly between the kitchen and dining area, her tension more visible now. I sat again at the head of the table, and just like before, Daniel and Sarah positioned themselves on either side of me. The crystal glasses had been cleared away, the dinner plates stacked neatly, but the air crackled with something unspoken. "I hope you don't mind," Sarah said with measured politeness. "But we tidied up a bit. Didn't want to leave Maria with too much work." "Very considerate," I said with a bland smile, wondering exactly what they'd hidden while I was gone. Daniel drummed his fingers against the mahogany tabletop, an old nervous habit from childhood that betrayed him now. "So, Dad," he said, "feeling completely recovered? No more dizziness or confusion?" His tone was light, but the undertone was sharp. "Clear as a bell, son. That fresh air worked wonders." Sarah leaned in, her voice dripping with controlled concern. "You know, rich meals can affect people differently, as we get older. Maybe next time we should plan something lighter." Next time. As if there would be one after tonight. "I've always had a strong constitution," I said evenly. "Takes more than good food and wine to slow me down." Maria reappeared with fresh glasses of water, her movements precise but tight. When she placed mine down, her fingers brushed the edge of the table. A touch so small it could have been accidental, but I knew better. Daniel checked his watch, the movement so subtle I almost missed it. Whatever timetable they had was closing in. "Well," he said brightly, but the effort showed in his voice, "since you're feeling better, maybe we could continue our evening." I know Sarah was looking forward to more conversation. "Absolutely," she chimed in, her smile dazzling enough to light the chandelier. "We have so much catching up to do." But something had shifted. The cracks in their performance were widening, and I could feel the night building toward a breaking point. Daniel stood abruptly and walked to the liquor cabinet. "Dad," he said, pulling out a bottle, "let's have one more toast before the evening ends." Daniel's hands trembled just enough to notice as he measured whiskey into fresh crystal tumblers. I watched him closely, noting how he lingered over my glass. pouring a little more than necessary, the liquid catching the light in a way that wasn't quite right. "You know," I began casually, "I want to tell you about the day you were born, Daniel." His shoulders stiffened. "Dad, that's sweet, but maybe we should toast first. This whiskey is too good to let it get warm." "This is important, son." I leaned back, folding my hands calmly in my lap. "Your mother was in labor for 14 hours, longest day of my life." Sarah leaned forward, her smile a little too eager. "Robert, the whiskey will lose its flavor if we wait too long. Can't we drink and listen at the same time?" "Patience, dear. Some stories can't be rushed." I kept my eyes on Daniel as he carried the glasses over. When mine hit the table, I saw it clearly, a faint sediment swirling under the chandelier's glow. His own drink was lighter, crystal clear, free of anything unusual. Where was I? Oh, yes. Linda was convinced something was wrong because labor was taking so long. Daniel set my glass down gently, making sure I saw the generous pour. "The doctor kept telling us everything was normal," I continued, lifting my glass to inspect the color. "But your mother, she had instincts. She always knew when something wasn't quite right." "Fascinating," Sarah said, her smile tightening. "But that toast is getting warm, Robert. Family stories are always better with good whiskey." I swirled the glass gently, watching the foreign particles dance in the amber liquid. Zetramelium. Enough, according to my anonymous caller, to make me compliant, suggestible, ready to sign away everything Linda and I had built. "You're right about savoring good whiskey," I agreed, bringing the glass near my lips but not drinking. "Linda always said patience makes everything taste better." "Daniels," I twitched. "Dad, you've been talking for 10 minutes. The whiskey's getting warm. Time flies when you're sharing memories." I gestured with the glass, careful not to spill a drop. "Did I mention how tiny you were? Just 6 pounds, but you had the strongest grip I'd ever felt." Sarah suddenly stood and moved behind me, her hands resting on my shoulders in a way that was meant to seem affectionate. "Robert, you're such a wonderful storyteller. Why don't we toast to Daniel's birth, and then you can continue?" Her fingers pressed harder, the warmth of her touch edged with desperation. The plan was unraveling, and they knew it. "Your mother said you'd be stubborn from day one," I continued, ignoring her grip. "She was right, wasn't she? Once you set your mind on something, nothing could stop you." Daniel's composure cracked. "Dad, please, just one sip. Then tell us about Mom." "The thing about stubbornness," I mused, still holding my untouched glass, "is that it can be a virtue or a vice. Linda always worried about which way you'd choose." The room went silent except for the soft clinking of Maria washing dishes in the kitchen. Daniel and Sarah stared at me with growing frustration, their perfect scheme disintegrating with each second. "I think," I said slowly, "Linda would be heartbroken to see the choices you've made." Daniel's face went pale. "What do you mean by that?" Before I could answer, 3 sharp knocks pounded at the front door, firm, commanding, unmistakable. "Police! Open the door!" Daniel's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor as every trace of color drained from his face. The sharp metallic click of handcuffs cut through the dining room's stunned silence like a judge's gavel. Daniel stood frozen, pale as old parchment, while the senior officer stepped forward with the calm authority of someone who had seen too many family betrayals. "Daniel Harris, you're under arrest for attempted poisoning, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse," the officer said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "You have the right to remain silent." "This is insane." Daniel's voice cracked, high and desperate. "This is just a misunderstanding. My father's confused. Dad, please." Sarah's panic boiled over, her voice sharp and shaking. "Tell them this is all some terrible mistake." I rose slowly, still holding the untouched glass of poisoned whiskey in my hand. The sediment swirled in the amber liquid like guilty secrets refusing to sink. "There's no mistake," I said evenly. This glass contains zetramelium. My son added it so I'd be compliant enough to sign over my businesses. The junior officer, wearing latex gloves, took the glass carefully and held it under the chandelier. The foreign particles caught the light, visible proof of deliberate betrayal. "Sir," the senior officer said to Daniel, "attempted poisoning carries a minimum of 8 to 12 years. Conspiracy and elder abuse will add more time." Daniel's knees bent slightly, as if the words weighed him down. 12 years, but the loan sharks, they'll kill me if I don't pay in 11 days. Sarah's face drained of all color. "Daniel, shut up. Don't say anything else." But Daniel couldn't stop. "Dad, you don't understand. They threatened to break my legs, then kill me. I had no choice." "You had choices," I said quietly. "You chose gambling over your family, crime over honest work, poisoning your own father over facing the truth." The officers exchanged a look. They had heard plenty of desperate excuses before, but attempted patricide over gambling debts had its own disturbing edge. "Sarah Harris," the junior officer announced, "you're also under arrest as a co-conspirator." "No." Sarah's perfectly manicured nails dug into the edge of the table. "I didn't plan anything. Daniel forced me. I'm a victim, too." The senior officer's face didn't change. "Ma'am, our evidence shows you researched the victim's preferences and helped carry out the drugging plan." As the officers led them toward the door, Daniel turned back, his eyes holding one last desperate play. "Dad, how could you do this to your own family? Mom would be heartbroken." "Your mother valued honesty over comfort," I said firmly. "She would never forgive what you tried to do tonight." Maria emerged from the kitchen, her professional mask finally slipping. Satisfaction and sorrow flickered across her face. Justice had been done, but she understood the cost. The mansion fell silent except for the sound of car doors slamming and engines starting. Blue and red lights splashed across the expensive walls, staining them with the colors of consequence. Standing alone in the dining room where my family had tried to destroy me, I felt Linda's presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. She would have made the same choice. Shards of crystal glittered on the marble floor. The poisoned whiskey spread slowly across the polished stone, looking for all the world like spilled blood. Evidence of how close I'd come to losing everything I'd worked for glistened in the memory of that shattered crystal and poisoned whiskey. My phone buzzed with a text from the senior officer. "Station processing will take 2, maybe 3 hours. We'll need your formal statement." Time to finish what I'd started. Time to make sure justice held. The Brookhaven police station pulsed with late-night activity, drunk driving arrests, domestic disputes, and now, my family's conspiracy case. Daniel and Sarah sat in separate holding cells, their designer clothes looking ridiculous against institutional gray walls. Through reinforced glass, I watched Daniel pace his cell like a restless animal. Every few minutes, he'd glance toward where I sat giving my statement, his expression flipping between rage and desperate pleading. "Mr. Harris," Detective Harrison said, setting down his coffee with deliberate precision, "walk me through the zetramelium again. How did you know what to look for?" "Anonymous tip," I answered truthfully. "Someone called, warning me about the plan. They knew exactly what the drug was and how it worked." "Any idea who this person might be?" I thought of Maria, her nervous precision at dinner, her careful positioning so she could watch without appearing to. "No idea," I said. "But whoever it was, they saved my life." From the women's holding area, Sarah's sobs carried through the station's chaos. Her voice cut through like a siren. "This is all Daniel's fault. I only went along because I was scared." Detective Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Fear doesn't usually excuse conspiracy to commit elder abuse and fraud. We found the legal documents in Mr. Daniel Harris's office. Power of attorney, business transfers, the whole setup." "How long will they serve?" I asked. "Attempted poisoning alone? 8 to 12 years. Add conspiracy, elder abuse, and fraud. Daniel's looking at 15 to 20. Sarah might get less if she cooperates, but she's still looking at real time. The numbers felt surreal. My son would spend his 40s behind bars because he couldn't face his gambling debts like a man. The loan sharks he mentioned, Harrison continued, we'll need those details. It could explain the desperation, won't excuse the crime, but it matters for the record. Through the glass, I saw Daniel slump on the narrow bench, his head in his hands. 20 years of raising him, teaching him right from wrong, building something he could inherit. All undone by his refusal to take responsibility. Dad! His voice suddenly boomed through the station as he spotted me. Please, I'll pay it all back. I'll get treatment. I'll change. The same promises he'd made during our last fight over money. The same tone that had once fooled me, back when I was too naive to see manipulation for what it was. Mr. Harris, Detective Harrison said quietly, he's going to keep trying to pull you in. This is standard in family financial crimes. I know. Linda always said I was too soft with him. Maybe if I'd been stronger earlier. Not your fault, sir. Adult children make their own choices. Sarah appeared at her cell window, makeup streaking her face like war paint. Robert, please talk to them. Tell them I was coerced. I never wanted to hurt you. Her desperation rang with the same false note as Daniel's. Neither of them owned their choices, both quick to point fingers anywhere but inward. I turned back to the detective. There's something I need to ask. The person who warned me, they risked everything to save a stranger. If you like this story, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story has traveled.